It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with the good folks here in Clear Lake. Let me tell you, I've been involved with the Tea Party caucus up in Austin, and so many of the folks here have been representing you. During the year and during the session especially, they came and represented you in what the conservative thoughts are and what we as Americans have got to turn back to. And indeed, turning back to God is the number one thing we've got to do as Americans, as Texans, anywhere else. Now, my part is to tell you the bad news, okay? They told you all the good, religious, nice stuff. Let me start out by saying I've been in the legislature since the last century, okay? I was the first Republican from deep East Texas since Reconstruction back in 1996 that was elected, and went to the Texas legislature. I served 3 terms as the Republican with the most Democratic district in the Texas legislature. So I know how to serve in the minority. I served under Pete Laney with the Democrats in control of the Texas legislature. So I've been in the minority for 3 to 4 sessions, served back during that time. When you go to the Texas legislature, understand the Speaker of the House is the person who appoints all the committees. He appoints the chairman of the committee, the members on the committees. If the Speaker of the Texas House doesn't want it done, it won't get done. Okay? And here's how it works. You go to a committee and every member of the Texas House wants to get something done. Every citizen sends you up there to Austin to get something done. We all agree. It goes to a committee that the Speaker has appointed. The Speaker has appointed a chairman of that committee. He appoints each chairman of every committee. And the Speaker says to that chairman, I don't want that bill out. Guess what happens? Doesn't matter if everybody wants it. Doesn't matter if all 9 members of the committee want it out. 8 members say it's a 9-member committee want it out. If the Speaker doesn't want it, he tells the chairman of the committee doesn't want it. It never sees light of day. Now, that's where a lot of people don't understand. We don't exactly work as a democracy in the Texas legislature. And why is it then that the Speaker of the House is this mystical thing? Let me tell you, I used to work 15 years ago. You'd walk into the Texas legislature on swearing-in day. Your family's with you, everybody's hoopla. It's an honor to be in the Texas House. You're sitting there, hear all the grand speakers and everything. Then you raise your hand, say the pledge to the Constitution of the United States and to the state of Texas and take the oath of office. And then you kiss your wife, hug your daughters, and they go out of the building. They shut the doors, and then in a closed chamber, we elect the Speaker of the Texas House. Now, that's how it's been for decades, for all of history. It ain't none of your business who's the 3rd most powerful, question, maybe sometimes 2nd or 1st most powerful person in the state of Texas, not the citizens of Texas. Now, you elect the governor, right? You have a say in who the lieutenant governor is. But what's this Speaker of the House thing? Why are we hearing about it now? Well, about 4 years ago, Kathy Adams, the then chairman of the state Republican Party, filed a lawsuit. Kelly Shackelford, a fine Christian attorney, friend to many of us, from a great guy, filed a lawsuit, and the judge ruled in favor that the citizens of Texas could participate in the election and selection of the Speaker of the Texas House. And so that's why it's kind of odd. We're just now starting to hear across the state that something's different. Now all of a sudden, not only do the people of Texas have a right to elect the governor, the lieutenant governor, but now that 3rd powerful person you now have a voice in through your elected representative. By the way, I'm glad to hear that we've got 3 wonderful people that were here tonight running for office. Now, wonderful people, I have to reserve myself for Randy Weber because I know him too well. But Randy's a great guy. I've worked with him in the Texas legislature for years. And then we've got a fair person finally in the legislature, Mr. Faircloth. You need to get behind him, work for him. And Dr. Bonin needs to be, remember, Bonin and Faircloth and Weber are 3 that I'm hoping that you'll vote for. Now, understand, my endorsement may not be too valuable now because I just got kicked out of the Texas legislature for maybe a lot of different reasons. But mostly I think it was because maybe I talked too much and say too many things that are not wanted to be said outside the building. But let's take the Texas House. We started back when I said under Pete Laney, Democrat Speaker for several years. Then all of a sudden we as Republicans won a majority. and we started electing a Republican speaker. We elected a Republican speaker, and after about 3 sessions, we did such things as cut welfare in the state of Texas by over 25%. We passed the most thorough lawsuit reform, tort reform bill in the entire United States, cut medical costs for doctors and for practicing medicine across the state, limited lawsuits, example for the nation in lawsuit reform. We accomplished some wonderful things. Not enough, but we started that direction of conservatism that many of us in Texas are born bred and have in our souls, and we started accomplishing things. All of a sudden, a group of legislators who called themselves Republicans, about a dozen, decided that we were becoming far too conservative and radical in the Texas legislature and that our speaker needed to be kicked aside. So in the middle of a session, they started interrupting the speeches that were going on the House floor and wanting to recall the election of our Republican speaker. Now, this was 12 Republican representatives stopping the debate during a 5-month legislative session in order to elect a new speaker because the one that we had was too conservative and not moderate enough for them. In fact, their speech was that we had become too conservative and we needed to have a more moderate speaker that could work both sides of the aisles, like Pete Laney, the former Democratic speaker. Because of that, they worked. We got through that session. The next session, the 12 of them got together with 68 Democrats and 12 Republicans elected the current Speaker of the Texas House because we had become too conservative. Okay? Now, then we go through the session, and all of a sudden, the citizens of the state of Texas in the last election went and did something weird. I drove over 5,000 to 6,000 miles talking to Tea Parties, to organization Republican clubs, women Republican clubs all over the state of Texas with other members. I served as the chairman of the Texas Conservative Coalition. What we did is reorganize the Conservative Coalition in the Texas House, and we kicked out all of the people that didn't have a conservative voting records. How odd. You really are going to make somebody have a conservative voting scorecard to call yourself a conservative? How odd, okay? We did that. We started with 28 of us, and we would start going from city to city across the state during the last interim. And we would do town hall meetings, much like you're having here tonight. We'd get up and talk to the folks, and all of a sudden we'd say, now if you've enjoyed this, ask your state representative to invite us to come to your district and speak to you. And if your member of the Texas legislature is not a member of the Conservative Coalition, you might ask them why not. And because of that exposure, our number grew from 28 members to 52 members by the time the next session started. Why? Accountability. I started getting phone calls from other members of the House that had restrained themselves from being called a conservative, saying, Christian, my constituents are starting to call me. How do I join your organization? I mean, they're telling me I need to be a part of that. We grew to the second largest caucus in the Texas legislature last session, okay? And you elected across the state of Texas in the last election a super majority of Republicans in the Texas House. But let me tell you the rest of the story according to the Speaker's election. The Speaker of the Texas House is the most powerful person again. His purse, which had over $3 million in it, was powerful enough to hire most every consultant that was running the Republican candidates during that election. So on the day that we as Republican voters voted a conservative person to the Texas legislature, their consultant who was serving as a double agent being hired out of one pocket by your candidate, by the other pocket by the Speaker's political action committee, all of a sudden the first thing they said was sign this pledge card to Speaker Strauss. Guess who got reelected? By a supermajority of Republicans, we elected the exact same leadership team that 68 Democrats and 12 Republicans had elected the session before. How odd. Okay? Then the 15 of us that voted against the current Speaker, well, some of us didn't get to return to the Texas legislature. I had been there for about 15 years, and my new district kept only 2 counties out of the ones that I had represented for the period that I'd been there, and I wound up with 80% new constituents And that's what kind of happened in redistricting. Now, this is how it works. I want you to know how it works. Then you go back, let's go to the Republican Party of the state of Texas, okay? The last Republican convention before last, Kathy Adams invited me to be the chairman of the Platform Committee. Now, as chairman of the Platform Committee, it was my duty to lead in the writing of the platform of the Republican Party. And so we started writing the platform of the Republican Party, and I called up one of the executives of the Republican State Party, previous, not there now, but previous executives of the state party. And I said, listen, as I've been coming for 20 plus years to Republican state conventions, citizens come from all over the state, pay their own way to write this platform. They vote in their local senatorial districts from their homes, their cities. They come, and we have the only convention larger than the state Republican convention in the state of Texas is a national convention of the Democrat or Republican Party. People pay their own way. They come there. They think they're accomplishing something to stand up for what they believe and write that platform. Chairman of the platform. We write a platform. Good platform. Get through it. I said, tell you what. And here's what, when I called the office and said, why don't we, Mr. Executive in the party, who's no longer there, why don't we have them come as legislators, me, all the senators, all the representatives, and sign a board as we get introduced on stage, committing to follow that Republican platform. You know, that's what the people have all come for. And I was told immediately, Christian, I wouldn't have a politician sign a pledge for that platform if I had to. And that infuriated me, okay? And so timid Wayn goes back to the platform committee, and we add for the first time an accountability factor. Now, remember how we grew from 29 members because of accountability of telling voters to see if their representative was a member of the conservative coalition, and it grew? Well, we all of a sudden added a list of specific bills that would be in the platform, and then an accountability factor that said we would make a list of all the legislators and give it to the SREC, the Republican Executive Committee, 180 days prior to the next primary, and that would be released showing their voting record of all of me and all of the people. An accountability factor. Well, immediately I said, I'll be the guy in the next session they throw out of the dome and out of the Capitol. Literally, as a party, that almost happened. Understand, we went through that. There was a big fight on not doing this, how it wasn't proper. And I guess I'm admitting the errors of my ways. I actually believed that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, that the platform really meant that's what we intend to accomplish. I've been a member of the Texas legislature for 15 years, 7 terms. I cannot remember one time in a Republican caucus meeting, ladies and gentlemen, that the platform of the Republican Party was ever considered nor mentioned in a Republican caucus. Understand, what we have worked for and believe that you're standing holding on something is nothing but laughed at and tossed in a trash can, basically, when we leave town. Now, let me back off and say what I've learned. Munisteri and the folks up there are doing a great job. This is not reflecting on him. I'm talking about previous times. Not Kathy Adams, not even I'm not even going back. Don't start naming names. I'm just telling you, for decades, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party's job is not to get the platform implemented. Think of it. Their job is to elect a majority of Republicans. Or, if you're a Democrat, to elect a majority of Democrats. It don't matter who you were, what you believed, what your values are. If you wind up with that R label or that D label, you got the complete support 99% of the time of that state party and national party. And folks, that's where we as people have got to understand what these two gentlemen have just told us tonight. The future and the success of this country is not resting on the laurels of either the Democrat Party nor the Republican Party. But I'm proud to say, when I look up your website, that your Clear Lake Tea Party group, that on the website it says the answer to the problem in a short phrase It says, if my people who are called by my name. And that is where we as a people have got to understand, we have got to turn back to if we're going to change things. Let me tell you what happened to me. Now, I've already told you when I went against the speaker and tried to get the conservative coalition working, how they redistricted me out of the Texas legislature. Well, guess what? You remember I told you that gentleman that was an executive in the Republican Party that told me he wouldn't dare ever ask a candidate to stand behind the platform of the party? He was the consultant to my opponent and who ran against me and raised $500,000 to kick me out of office. So that's what being a loyal Republican will do for you, and a loyal conservative will do, both in the Texas legislature and in the Republican Party. You're going to face enemies. This is a war. I'm not whining. God has blessed me. I've had more time than I ever deserved of being in power. And there are good people in Austin. But people, let me tell you something. An old preacher told me one time, he said, and these are young preachers here, it was an old preacher, okay. I was griping about Bill Clinton, what he had done with Monica Lewinsky and my 3 little girls and what had gone on with that. And I said, how do these people support him? He said, Wayne, let me tell you something. When darkness is in control, does the best job it possibly can do, it's just going to get darker. And you have to applaud them. They're doing what they're supposed to do. If there's no light in a situation, it's not the darkness's fault. Folks, let me tell you, this is not a nation of the politicians being in charge. I mean, that's what we've let it become. But this Constitution, these Bill of Rights we have, are saying that we are of the people, by the people, for the people. The Tea Party is the hope of this country. The Tea Party is the hope that we can drag God's people, many times screaming and dragging their heels, who have been lied to and duped, but have abdicated their place as the ones that are boss and controller in this society, because the government has lied to them. And is unlike these pastors, unlike these bold men that have stood up, many of our churches across these United States have believed the lie that if they get involved in politics, they'll lose their tax-free exemption. So what? Why are we bowing to a God of taxes? By the way, you know that bill was filed by the great Texas President Lyndon Baines Johnson, because he got mad at a bunch of preachers when he ran for senator, and he went and passed a law that would lose their tax-free exemption if you participated in politics. By the way, you know how many churches have lost their tax-free exemption? 0. That's right. Man, that's a record to run on. Why is that? Well, because there's this little item that's still there, if the courts will let us still have it for a while longer, called the Constitution. And there's this little thing in the Constitution called freedom of religion. And a law passed by Congress can't supersede the U.S. Constitution, so you can't uphold that tax-free exemption law, okay? There's a good man I support, Brian Hughes, that's running for Speaker of the Texas House. Brian Hughes is a good man from Northeast Texas. Anybody from East Texas is a good fellow. But he's a great guy. And there may be other candidates that come along, but let me tell you, Brian is a good, godly man. You need to have your representative look at it. Now understand, to have a speaker in the Texas House, you by a court ruling now have a right to participate in this. This is important. Third most powerful person, debatably sometime the most important in the state. You now have a right to participate in that. And Brian Hughes is a great guy. But we've got to win 76 votes. Now here you look at governor. How many votes does it take to win the governor's office? Boy, millions. How many to win the lieutenant governor's office? Millions. How many to win Speaker of the House? 76. I think we can do that one. I mean, I can count that high, okay? But it's going to take pushing your new, old representative to stand up and make sure that you're going to support them. You're going to work for them. But they've got to understand you're watching, you're listening. You're going to participate as a Tea Party person, as a Republican, as a Democrat, wherever you find yourself, you're going to be active. You're going to, number one, as a church-going believer in Jesus Christ, going to take this nation back. Let me tell you, one thing that's so important that these men have emphasized here tonight. You go to Washington, D.C. sometime. If you hadn't been, go look at the Constitution of the United States. You go into this room, and there's this room, and they have the Constitution, just the document at the front of the room. And at nighttime, it goes into the floor and locks up in a safe and raises up each day. The most valuable document in our nation. You know the only other document in that whole building with the U.S. Constitution, you know what it is? The Mayflower Compact, right next to it. You walk from the Constitution to the Mayflower Compact. You know what the Mayflower Compact says? We come heretofore into this country and to these parts for the spreading of the message of our Lord Jesus Christ and the salvation of this country. It's somewhere that line. Folks, we have sat and been lied to. We've abdicated our place as leaders in this country. We have sat back, and those of us that have stood up and mouthed off have got kicked at. Let me tell you something kind of fun. This is kind of funny. I was named, this is an honor, so I'm bragging, okay? I've been there, I'm not there anymore. I can brag anyway or say what I want to. They can't kick me out. They done kick me out. I was named Legislator of the year before last, with American Legislative Exchange Conference for the entire United States. Pretty neat. Yeah. Okay. Same year, worst legislator in the state by Texas Monthly. Now, I said, that's an oxymoron, isn't it? I mean, the best of the, my wife said, no, it's appropriate. Said ox is something big and fat, and moron speaks for itself, and that pretty well fits, right? But I want to thank you tonight for allowing me to be here. Thank you for your being here. Taking back this country is what's important, both at the national level and the state level. And you are the rulers. Turning to God, we have got to understand. Now, I'm all for prayer, and that is a valuable resource we must turn to. But this pastor stood here, and what he held up was the operating manual. About 95% of what we need to do is written in that book. And faith is shown not by what you do when you're on your knees, but what you do when you get up off your knees. And folks, let me tell you, it's time we went to our knees, got in the book, and when we stood up, we have a battle to take this nation back. And we are about to lose it. But in this day, in this hour, in this time, we're given a chance. And the decision is not the politicians. It's yours and it's mine. Of the people, by the people, for the people, under God. Thank you very much.